In this evening. Now, I want to make sure I got my agenda correct. Yes. Because it is the 60th anniversary, um, Lynnae Hornbarger, come on, Lynnae was also a winner of the Thomas C. Wilson Lifetime Achievement Award. Lynnae is like the rock of the club and has been for more years than she'll admit. Lynnae is going to talk with you a little bit about the history of the club.
So somehow I became the unofficial official historian of the Reno Ad Club. And I'm not sure how I fell into that role. But as an advertising person, my deliverable to you tonight is a brief history of the Reno Ad Club in 5 minutes or so. So let's get going. Our timeline begins around 1958. So thinking back, oh wait, some of you weren't even born in 1958. Some of us were mere children. So the few people here who can, think back to 1958. A group of Reno advertising and public relations men wanted or maybe even needed an association. So in 1958, the San Francisco Ad Club installed this new chapter of the Advertising Association of the West, and the Reno Ad Club was born. And yes, it was a man's industry. The very first president of the Reno Ad Club in 1958-59 was Harry Spencer. And we are so very delighted that he is here to join us tonight as our guest. And I might add that Harry still occasionally writes for the Reno Gazette-Journal. And a few years ago, he gave a wonderful presentation to the Good Old Days Club on advertising in the good old days. Early on, the club met at the El Cortez, a true hotspot, with impromptu meetings in the coach room of the Mapes Hotel and the corner bar at the Riverside Hotel. Since then, we've been everywhere, from the Reno Elks Lodge to the Atlantis now. And this event, Advertising Person of the Year, has been everywhere from, again, the Elks Lodge to the Sky Room of the Mapes Hotel. Luncheons were always on Fridays, and there was always a bar. And not too many people went back to work. A few years ago, quite a few, we gave up the bar because there weren't as many drinkers, and it was getting expensive. And I truly think that was a moving force for us to move this event from a luncheon to a dinner, so that we can celebrate the good old days with the bar. We're also honored tonight to have another Reno Ad Club president from our very early days, Ron Smith, who was president in 1969 and 1970. Ron? I interviewed Alan Dunn, a name from lots of our past, a few years ago, who became president in 1965. And he told me he inherited a club with little money. So Alan started Sheep Dip as a fundraiser. never realizing that it would last 55 years. And our 55th year will be, and our last year will be next January. Alan said he thought it would last a year or two just to get us out of our financial woes. 3 years later, after much success and raising much money, the Reno Ad Club started a tradition of supporting advertising education by providing scholarships to ad students at UNR. And that's a tradition that continues today. In 1967, the Advertising Association of the West and the Advertising Federation of America merged and became the American Advertising Federation, which they are still to this day. The only national trade association that brought together all segments of our industry with a single unified voice. In 1973, Lorraine Walker Arms, who owned several radio stations, became the first woman president of the Reno Ad Club. The Reno Ad Club Foundation was formed in 1974 to administer the proceeds of sheep dip for scholarships. That first board of trustees reads like a Reno who's who. Thomas C. Wilson, whose name we honor tonight, banker Jordan Crouch, attorney David Belding, and Ron Smith. Ron served on the foundation for many years. I'm going to say 30 plus, but it's probably more than that. And Ron also has the distinction, as a fun fact for all of you, as being the only person to have helped write, produce, and appear in what will be next January, all 55 sheep dips. When I interviewed Ron for a history of the Reno Ad Club a few years ago, I asked him about a rumor that the Reno Ad Club board meetings were held in Hawaii, because that had been floating around for years. And he says that's not technically true, but they may, and he said may, have held a board meeting or so at an Advertising Association of the West meeting in Hawaii. It's also important for us to remember, as we talk about 60 years, that the Reno Ad Club had a very close association with the Better Business Bureau of Northern Nevada. Their director, Don Crawley, was on our board for many years, handling mailings and communications. And that was a lot different than than communications are today. And he served as the nominating committee for years. 1982 brought a change to the landscape for all of us when a group of women, I'm one of them, formed Reno Women in Advertising. And that was the first real competition the Reno Ad Club had ever seen. And we were pretty good competition. So changes, always changes. In 1984, the board voted to drop out of the American Advertising Federation. While we did just fine on our own, we had our Silver Pick Creative Awards and our own student competition. Thanks to Michael Erdley, and he drove this effort, we rejoined AAF in 1993, allowing our members to enter the National Addies and our UNR students to compete in the National Student Advertising Competition. And I'd like to add that there was a year, what year, Bob?
For what?
won the entire UNR
2003.
2003, won the entire nation out of 200 universities with a presentation on the Toyota Matrix, which was a big deal. It's like winning the Super Bowl. A fun fact: I am the only person in the entire AAF system to have become president on the day a club dropped out of AAF, and to become president on the day that club returned to AAF. In 1999, the Reno Ad Club and Reno Women in Advertising voted to merge, and we became the Advertising Association of Northern Nevada, A2N2, with co-presidents Jackie Shelton and Eileen Gay. A couple of other changes occurred. After the merger, we cut Sheep Dip loose, and they continue on as their own nonprofit. Several years ago, our board voted to change our name to AAF Reno, along with most of the clubs in the AAF organization, to ensure that our national affiliation was prominent. In recent years, we've had several young, hip presidents. And and Sterling Doak, Brian Johnson, and now Kurt Thigpen are dragging us into this century, dragging us into the electronic era, and keeping us relevant and current. In addition to Harry and Ron, I'd like to introduce all the past presidents who are here tonight and ask them to stand. Michael Erdley, Jackie Shelton, Linda Ramos, here's Linda, Amber Howland, John Murphy, Coley Glenn, JP Glenn, and I also would like to introduce, thank you. I'd also like to introduce the two presidents from Reno Women in Advertising, because they're part of our history now too, Esther Isaac and Jackie Shelton. And now I'd like to ask anybody who has ever been on the board of one of these organizations that we represent tonight to please stand and be honored. Yeah. You are the backbone of this organization. So that's what we've been doing for 60 years. I have no time in my brief 5 minutes to tell you about all the fun we've had along the way. Like Jackie Shelton and I bribing William Letcher to drive us to Sonoma in a blizzard for the district Addy judging, or what we bribed him with. You can ask Jackie. Or Charles Pullen filling Sterling Doak's car with plastic peanuts, and I mean filling it, at a Western Region conference in Albuquerque. So now what I would like to ask you to do is to raise your glasses, in my case, bifocals, and toast the Reno Ad Club, Advertising Association of Northern Nevada, AAF Reno, on a successful next 60 years. Thank you.